Well, it's the most wonderful time of the year. I have to start off my show with a little song for today's guest, and he'll get a kick out of that as he sits in the green room. And you probably already know who the guest is, a great friend here to not only Trust the Profits, but also to Doubling Down, and I like to say to myself as well. But that's right, the best time of the year. It's Saratoga, and it's a little bit of a weird feeling this year as I feel like I just left Saratoga from Belmont Stakes weekend and you turn around and quickly, here we go. I was just with my dad, and he's heading up Thursday for opening weekend. And it just feels a little bit different, but I'm sure once we get up there and get into the swing of it, it will be as good as it always is. Now, right here on Doubling Down, we focus on daily double tickets. Vinny, our buddy Vinny from New York up in the Saratoga area, came through and hit that 56-1 double on last episode with King's Barnes, a horse that I've never bet. I just don't like him. And he's a horse that I fade, and I was wrong, and that's okay. We both hit the second leg, so I went 1 out of 2, so I can be happy about that. Who's a horse? Put in your comments that you just can't feel comfortable betting like King's Barnes is for me. Let's get to that special guest, and maybe he'll sing a song for us. How'd I do, Matt? How did I do?
I loved it. As soon as you started singing, I knew exactly where you were going with that, and it's great to be here. I'm sure I will bust out a song at some point during this recording. And thank you so much, though, for having me. And you're right; it is a wonderful time of the year as we get ready for the main Saratoga meet. But I agree with your premise that we just left Saratoga a month ago, and obviously had a hugely successful Belmont Stakes Racing Festival weekend. So many wonderful stories, obviously highlighted by Dornick winning that Belmont Stakes. And I think everybody's seen the America's Best Racing video of Jason Worth celebrating and being excited about that, and being so visible as an owner in that space, and a lot of great stuff. But it's funny, I agree with you about King's Barnes. He's a horse I always have a hard time betting as well. I just have never really liked that horse, except for the one time I did, which was in the Louisiana Derby. That was the only time I liked that horse. I won that day, but generally speaking, I think he gets away with slow fractions. He doesn't really finish when he's supposed to. And, Luis Saez gave him a better ride, I think, than he did last time when he really strangled the fractions on him and let him rate a little bit more effectively this time. And I also think it speaks to, quite frankly, the depth of that handicap division, which is not particularly strong. And that a horse like King's Barnes can now assert himself as one of the top contenders looking ahead for the Breeders' Cup Classic potentially.
I was pretty confident he would get beat there, but he proved me wrong, and that's okay. Vinny came on and nailed it. So good job by Vinny hitting 56-1. He is Matt DeSantis. We forgot the key introduction from Naira Bets, and he has a new YouTube channel along with Naira Bets. And Matt, I saw that you were looking for my attention. Let's be honest, right? Your first beginner video on the channel is how to bet daily doubles, because you knew that you had missed being on here for Belmont Stakes weekend, giving me a jab. So I knew the calling when I saw, Matt's dying to get on Doubling Down. So Matt, we'll put a link to that over on the Naira Bets channel. Let's go a little bit first on the daily double itself. And why'd you start with that video of all the opportunities that you could go?
Yeah, so we started with 3 general videos. So one was just like a win play show wager, one was on exactas, and one was on daily doubles. And I feel like those are 3 very easily accessible wagers. Obviously, win play shows where most people start. Exactas pretty straightforward as well. And then doubles is kind of when people start dipping their toe into multi-race sequences. But the thing I like about doubles is they often are quite affordable tickets. I mean, you see that you do this all the time. You put together an $8 ticket, a $6 ticket, a $10 ticket. And to your point, you can see 56-1 returns if you get it right. So you can get those huge payouts for very little cost, which I think is important for people starting out who don't have much of a bankroll. They might only be playing with $100 on a particular day, and they need to figure out the best way to potentially get some return on that investment. And so I think doubles are a great way to do that. And I think it's important to talk about the strategy behind doubles, because it helps inform the strategy then you build on for pick 3s, pick 4s, pick 5s, and pick 6s. I think sometimes because daily doubles are such an affordable wager, people can sometimes get a little irresponsible with them and start making them into $16 wagers, $20 wagers, $25 wagers. And you might still be able to turn a profit, but that's the sort of ticket construction that gets you into a lot of trouble when you start trying to build that out into a pick 3, a pick 4, a pick 5, where you just go, well, I don't want to get beat by this horse. Well, I don't want to get beat by that horse. Well, this horse could run. Well, you start talking yourself into 5 or 6 horses in every leg. And that's a real problem. So I just felt it was something that it was a good introductory bet, but something that can also help people build for future wagers.
Well, let's see. You can critique my structure of my doubling down ticket this week. We'll start with race 10 at Saratoga. For Saturday, we're looking at Saturday opening weekend, the Diana Stakes. It's for fillies, grade 1, 4-year-old and up, going a 1.125 on the turf. And Matt, you have a really healthy field here. Last year there was a field of 5, with which White Beam was your winner. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we talked about with Saratoga happening with the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival a month ago. There's some you're going to maybe use some races from that weekend to help you get through both of these legs here of this daily double. And obviously the Just a Game and the New York Stakes have heavy influence on the race here. And that has a big impression on what has led me to 2 horses coming out of the New York Stakes for exactly that I want on my ticket. And 2 horses that I've fallen in love with. So we've talked about the bias with Kings Barnes. Didia is one of my absolute favorite horses right now. And I'm really frustrated that I didn't crush Didia Belmont Stakes weekend coming off at 9-1. One horse I did crush, though, was Chili Flag. Chili Flag was one of my favorite picks of that weekend. Coming back with a RaceLens angle of the Chad Brown horses. If Chad Brown has a 4-year-old on the turf coming into a race where the last race was their highest Equibase speed figure, I know that's a lot to follow. It's incredible. 30% win percentage over 200 ROI, and that was what Chili Flag fit going into that race. I'm definitely going to use Didia on my card. I think that race, the New York Stakes, was much better than the Just a Game. The speed figures coming back from that New York Stakes, Matt, going by Equibase, the last place horse got 100 in that race. The Just a Game winner got a 97. So I'm absolutely starting with my ticket using the number 4. Didia. Is Didia on your ticket?
Yeah, absolutely. She's on mine as well. And she's a horse that I think a lot of people really love. And she ran so well that day. I will say, if there's a note of caution, she had pretty much so an ideal trip with Jose Ortiz and was able to kind of navigate that field with relative aplomb and what looked really good doing it, obviously. But she is one who she travels well. She takes her A game everywhere. You don't have to worry about her being a horse for a course. She's traveled over so many different types of ground. She's handled so many different types of going. So I think it's, definitely a horse that you'd be foolish to leave off your ticket in this particular case. I really like Didia as well. So definitely one that I'm going to consider. And one of the reasons I like her is, we should mention, there is going to be rain in the forecast on Thursday and Friday. Saturday looks very nice, but I would imagine this turf course is going to take on quite a bit of moisture, and it is not going to be firm on Saturday. And what I like about Didia is she's got that tactical speed to be able to sit 3rd or 4th in the early going of the race. And I bring that up because a lot of times when a turf course takes on a lot of water, it starts playing more like a dirt track, in that it's really hard to make up considerable ground when you're running over yielding or even sometimes of kind of softer turf. And the fact that she can put herself sitting in a tracking trip, I think, is very advantageous for her. And Jose Ortiz clearly got a great ride out of her, and he's back up in New York, which we love to see for the Saratoga meet.
Who else did you use in here? Because after Didia, we went a little bit sideways in our picks. First of all, is Didia your on top pick, or do you prefer someone else?
No, she's my on top pick for this race. So
we agree there.
I think we're in alignment on that. But I really felt like this is a race that could go a lot of different directions, and obviously trying to decipher the Chad from the other Chad, from the other Chad, from the other Chad, and finally from the other Chad. He's got 5 runners in this race, and trying to figure out who's going to be the one who fires this particular time, I think, is a little bit difficult. But I will say one horse that I do like, that I'm including, that's not a Chad horse actually, is the number 3 Mission of Joy. And this is a horse that I just think tends to run, has gotten kind of progressively better. I'm willing to draw a line through that distaff turf mile two back. That was over good ground, but it was also coming off a little bit of a layoff. Otherwise, this horse has shown very steady improvement for Graham Motion. And that's a trainer I just have a lot of respect for. We just saw him win with Johnny Velasquez in the Belmont Derby this past weekend to close out the Belmont at the Big A Festival. And so this is another one who has some tactical speed. You know, it can sit a tracking trip and at the very least a mid-pack trip. So I think, again, looking at that sort of trip setup there, really like Mission of Joy as one of those. And then I'll be honest, one of the Chad Brown horses that I think might get overlooked is the number 5, Gina Romantica. And she's an interesting horse in that if you look, her third race back tends to be her best. And she is going to be in her third race back. So if you look last year, her third race back was the First Lady, which she won in a huge upset over an Italian who was kind of invincible to that point in her career and had been running off a bunch of victories. And so even if you look, her third start in her career on the turf was a victory in the Queen Elizabeth II Cup, another grade one. She showed progression from that Jenny Wiley where she clearly needed a race. And she was much more competitive coming out of the Justa game, less than 2 lengths back. I think she can take another step forward for Brown. And, you know, she's been working on the turf up at Saratoga consistently. So that's one I definitely like. And then White Beam is another one who's just got good tactical speed. And again, that's kind of my thought process is I want horses that are going to be able to put themselves in a position to be forward in this spot. And that's another one with Flavian Pratt aboard. I don't know if there's a better turf jockey right now on the East Coast than Flavian. So he's been riding so beautifully up here. So that's one that I'm going to consider. And then finally, Evie Jets is the other one for Merktang Kendermasi with Dylan Davis. That's going to be a little bit more of a price. But again, that's a horse that could get out on the front end, get loose, and you know, just maybe be able to take them gate to wire. But I'm going to be playing against a horse like Chili Flag. I think that horse from the far outside post may just, you know, I think last time was the time to get that horse. Absolutely. And I really like that horse, but I just wonder whether or not that was the race. And now maybe we see a little bit of either maybe not a regression, but maybe just a plateau effect, and also has to work out a trip from that far outside.
I thought that's where you were going to go when you used Evie Jets and White Beam as far as the speed, right? Because I didn't see a ton. And you got your other horses here, which I love on the turf, are some big closers. And you took some horses that you figure are going to be on the front end. However, those are horses I figured. So White Beam, my deal with White Beam is just the fact that the horse has decreasing speed figures. Me and you are usually in alignment with horses that are rising in speed figures. And this horse hasn't won since this exact race last year. So yes, won this race, but since then, in grade 1 company and in a grade 3, lost to number 8, Nisi Marie. Is that how you say it? I hope Nisi Marie. This is a horse I'm going to take a shot on because it has just the opposite, which is some rising speed figures. And I'm just going to use a little bit of that, what I talked about, fading the Justa game and using the New York. Look at the right column here as far as speed figures. And I mentioned it, 113, 111, 109, 108, 108, McCulloch, Fev Rover, Aspen Grove, American Sanja, English Rose. I mean, this was a really strong competitive race, and this horse came closing strong really late, just wasn't going to catch Diddy on that particular day. And that's kind of my angle coming into this race. Definitely want to use Chili Flag. I really love that horse, and there's a little bit of a bias there, especially when you hit him nice and then you're going to play him coming back. Your price probably, you know, I think it was 4-1 that day. 4.5 to 1 in the Justa game, but he's the only one I kind of want coming back from that race because I'm much more heavy weighted towards the 2 that are coming out of the New York Stakes, which is the 4 and the 8. So I go 4, 8, 10 here to hopefully get by. But I'm really confident again in Didier. I mean, Didier just doesn't do much wrong. And this
he doesn't. I mean,
Go ahead.
she doesn't, and she's been remarkably consistent since she came over here to the United States, and she was remarkably consistent in Argentina before that. I mean, she's just a hard knocking horse that just doesn't. You're right, does not really run a bad race. The only race you could say where she ran poorly was the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, going a mile and a quarter. She still earned a 98 buyer speed figure that day, and she was 4 lengths off of it, but. Other than that, she's never really finished outside the money in her career, and she's just racked up wins left and right. And she's done it at Colonial Downs, at Fairgrounds, at Churchill, at Santa Anita, at Gulfstream Park, at Saratoga. I mean, she runs over all sorts of ground. I will say the one thing, if you're going to try to find a potential hole, is depending on the turf conditions, she's not won over a soft turf course yet or a softer turf course. So now, granted, there's very limited examples of that. She's only really had 2 opportunities to run over ground, race with softer ground. I don't think it's disqualifying by any stretch, but just something to note. And I think that's something also. And this is, we're recording this several days in advance. This is something I would just encourage people to do on the day of the racing. Pay attention to how the course is playing leading up to this race. I mean, because it's one of those things where if it just looks like speed is what is the name of the game on the turf, then that can shift your strategy a little bit. Meanwhile, if it's playing fair and you're seeing closers coming from the back, then obviously that's something that, to take into consideration as well.
And Chili Flag's a horse that has run 9 times on the wet turf, has 3 wins, 4 seconds. And we talked about the consistency of Didia. What's wrong with this consistency of Chili Flag, whose only race in the last 5 where he didn't win was a 6th behind Didia, and in that race got bumped pretty hard. There was some trouble. And if you go back and watch this trip, which I did, down at Gulfstream in the Pegasus, finished only 2.5 lengths behind. You see the 6th place. But aside from that, it's seconds, thirds, and firsts.
And this feels like a Chad horse that has somehow flown under the radar for a while, that it wasn't considered. And I made this point, I remember leading up to that Just a Game, that I said, this kind of feels like a sneaky Chad horse that's like, this is the one that's going to fire. And, it just fit that profile. Like you said, improving speed figures, really has not really done anything wrong, just kind of repeatedly got better and better. And, and I think sometimes people will discount Chad Brown horses that have very humble beginnings. And this horse, he's not a typical Chad Brown horse, which is, you see a Chad Brown horse coming over from France, immediately they go into grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 races. That wasn't the case with Chili Flag. There were a lot of allowance and optional claiming races. And I think people see that and they just go, well, how good can that one really be? If this was really the best, then Chad would have put this horse into the top tier competition. What you're seeing is this is just a later developing horse, as many turf mares tend to be. She's 5 years old. That's usually when they start running their best races. So Chili Flag, very dangerous. Irad Ortiz aboard, obviously very dangerous in that spot. I'm going to play against just because of the post position. I just worry about what that trip's going to look like.
We move on to the second leg of the daily double for Saturday, July 13th. This is the Sanford Stakes, a grade 3 for 2-year-olds. And Matt, we texted a little bit about where we were going in there, because when I first told you we were going to use these 2, you go, oh, great, Chad and Todd. And I said, I hadn't looked yet. I knew the Chads, but I hadn't looked at this race yet. And then I started to take a peek through the past performances, and it immediately jumped out to me when I saw Sire of Light and Nona Bella, because I knew those connections very quickly from this year's Kentucky Derby Trail, which is this is a full brother to Fierceness, and also in the Rapoli stable. So all the connections there as far as being related to Fierceness, and that is the horse Mentee, who broke his maiden in his first race, June 15th, Belmont at Aqueduct, in a maiden special weight going 90 for 90,000. Second place finisher there, Colloquial, who lost only by a nose, came flying late in that race. Well, Matt, if you use RaceLens here, which I've become very quick at, it's makes you very easy. That horse was sired by Vekoma. Well, Vekoma's not having too bad of a start here. Dirt sprints, 20 starts, 10 wins, 16 in the money. So
it's unreal.
You got a horse that's closing on Mentee, who has some legit talent according to the other horses that we're seeing coming from Vekoma. got a little gun shy in singling Mentee, but you were confident.
Yeah, part of it goes to ticket construction. I mean, I wasn't going to, because I went 5 deep in that first leg, trying to, maybe hedge a little bit in some different spots. I I didn't want to go Mentee and, I didn't want to say here's a horse that's probably going to go off as an odds-on favorite, and then I'll also include another horse, and I could get away with it. But if I catch something like Didia and Mentee, that double's probably not going to pay a huge amount. And now I'm spending, if I go Mentee and another horse, now I'm doing a $10 ticket. I don't even know if I'm going to get $10 back if it's Didia Mentee in that sequence. So again, some of it's just the strategy of I went really deep in that first leg. Now in the second leg, I have a horse that I do have a strong opinion about in terms of Mentee. And what I'll say is that effort by Colloquial is also amazing, because what Mentee did that day was set the track record for 5 furlongs at Aqueduct. And that was the fastest anybody has ever run 5 furlongs in the history of that track, which is noteworthy. And Colloquial, to his credit, was literally a nose away from setting the track record that day. So those are two extraordinarily fast horses. You mentioned the pedigree. And what gives me the most confidence is Johnny Velasquez. There are few jockeys I trust more on a young horse than John Velasquez. There is a reason that Wesley Ward goes to him for all of his top 2-year-olds. There is a reason that Todd goes to him for these types of horses. He is so good at getting young horses to relax, particularly on the lead. And even though he drew the inside rail, I just have a lot of confidence in this horse. And so much so that I did decide to just go single in this particular race. But I think your other choice in here, and you built in that flexibility by going a little skinnier in the first leg, I do have to say your second choice makes a lot of sense here, I think.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll note, what kind of gave me a little bit of confidence to maybe add a horse in here
Yeah.
was the fact that here on Equibase it says that on that day that Mentee won, there was a really strong front end bias on the track that day. So, got out to the front, and then I used being up by 5 and only winning by a nose. Now, although it was to a horse that has a lot of talent, as maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of sign of he gets out there and maybe loses focus a little bit. Now we're going 6 furlongs, correct? Yeah, 6 furlongs,
Yeah.
and that race was only 5 furlongs. So those were the reasons for me to say, maybe I can maybe look somewhere else. And not to mention his brother is a horse who I relied on races like this, and then he let me down. So this is a little bit of I'm going to get back to you, right? Well, I'm going to use this number 6. Awesome name,
Yep.
Studley Do Right. Okay, this is a
Love it.
Nyquist baby, 2 for 2. Okay, now John Robb ships this horse back from Laurel because he went to Laurel and worked out in Laurel on July 6th.
Yeah.
Now he's coming back to Saratoga again, a barn that doesn't ship a ton off. I don't know outside of Laurel, but I didn't see much coming up to Saratoga out of this barn.
No.
And this is a horse that has a win over the Saratoga track. So
Yes.
because of that Belmont Stakes weekend, and this is kind of where we're talking about something being a little bit funny, normally on opening weekend at Saratoga, you wouldn't have that little stat to kind of dig into and look at. So not only does he have a win over the Saratoga track, that race was also at 5.5 furlongs, which to me, using a little bit of it's a 2-year-old, and now we're going 6 furlongs. I at least know this horse is that extra half furlong to maybe get further to get to the 6. I also think this was the funny race. I don't know if you remember this race on Belmont Stakes Derby, but Touchy was a horse who looked much the winner, and I think it was Rosario who pulled him in to match up with 3 Echoes and came from middle of the track all the way over to the left, and this kind of opened up the middle for Studley Do Right. I think if maybe Touchy doesn't do that, then perhaps maybe Studley Do Right doesn't get there. But I'm going to go back to that little angle a little bit of you had 3 horses in there with a 79 and 80 and an 84 that they got in that Equibase speed figure out of that race, whereas the Mentee race, an 81 and 81, and then a drop off to a 69. So the speed figures from that race that Studley Do Right had, even though shipping up from Laurel is probably going to get knocked a little bit, maybe you can catch a little bit of a price here with Studley Do Right if a horse is going to beat Mentee. He was the one that I was most intrigued by.
I agree. He was the one I gave the most consideration to as well. And the other reason was, honestly, if you look at his maiden breaking victory, over a sloppy sealed track. What did I just talk about in terms of the weather?
Yep.
There's probably going to still be some moisture on the dirt. It might not be sloppy. It might not even be a sealed track. It might just be good by especially late in the day on Saturday. But there's still going to be some moisture in the track. I think that's noteworthy. And we just saw this a couple weeks ago with the Bashford Manor Stakes, where a horse came from well off the pace, politically correct, to
Mhm.
win that race and a 2-year-old race. And one of the concerns that you have is when many of these 2-year-olds win, they do it in gate to wire fashion. The problem is when they all try to win in gate to wire fashion, what happens? The pace gets too hot. They go 6 furlongs. And what happens? The horse that can sit off the pace ends up coming off to win the race. So I think Studley Do Right, aside from having a fantastic name, is one that makes a lot of sense. And I'll say, I lived in the Mid Atlantic for a while, and John Robb, he knows how to get horses ready. He's won a lot of big stakes races down at Parks or at Laurel, I should say. He might not be someone who, everybody following New York racing knows much about, but he really knows how to get his young horses ready. He knows how to win stakes races, and I think he's a really good horseman, and I think he can get this horse ready. And there's the race that you mentioned where a Rosario goes all the way over, and Studley Do Right just goes flying right on by easy in the Tremont.
And one last thing I want to mention about this horse is a 2-year-old who's 11 lengths back in a 5.5 furlong race
Yeah,
at one call in the race. So to your point of the opposite, right? The horses kind of go to the front and then they tire each other out. Well,
yeah.
this is a horse as a 2-year-old that was able to close from 11 lengths back. To me, that's got to be something on the track that he's racing on again this weekend,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. No, like I said, I mean, just the ability to. So oftentimes when young horses get that far behind, they just kind of pack it in, and for that horse to stay to task, and what you saw was that late kick as well. I mean, he really was able to sustain. I mean, this is a horse that sired by Nyquist, you would imagine is going to be able to go a little bit longer, and it's going to maybe focus on 2 turns eventually. And you could tell that stamina just started to kick in that last half furlong, and now you're stretching out to 6, and honestly makes a lot of sense.
Check out on Naira Bets the will pays, because as Matt said about ticket structure, what I might do here is play more money on the Didia Mentee a daily double by itself with my ticket,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then use the 8 and the 10. I'm sorry, the 4, 8, 10 with just the 6 for a little bit less. So you want to play with those probables to know what they will pays will be, so that you don't lose money. That's another way. Ticket structure is important. It's important in all your bets, right, Matt? But on the
Yeah.
advantage of the daily double is you get to look at the probables and know, okay, well, if I bet Diddy into Mentee and it's only going to be $3, why don't I put
Right.
$5 on that so I can win 15, and then put $1 on the other way, and maybe those are paying $20, $25. There's a little bit of math you need to use in there, and what you want to do is go to Naira Bets to sign up. There's a promo code track200, I believe, because Matt, the only reason I know this, not that I haven't been on Naira Bets to look at your incredible content, but I've always just played along with TVG's kind of been my app that I've just always had, and you get comfortable, right? Well, if anybody hasn't checked in on TVG recently, you're not going to find, at least as of Monday, the stream for Saratoga. So you want to get your bankroll filled up on Naira Bets. They'll match you that $200 to
Yeah.
start off. And you'll get to see the wonderful pics of Matt DeSantis, not only on Doubling Down, but also they got your mug right on there, I hope.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we might actually be we might actually be running a special 250 match, actually. So
Oh,
when you go to the NairaBets.com or the NairaBets app, make sure just to check out what the latest match deposit bonus is. But I think we're trying to kind of sweeten the pot for some new players, obviously, who might be coming over to NairaBets. But listen, we got obviously the YouTube channel you can check out. There's a lot of free resources. This week alone, I have Maggie Wolfendale coming on to talk about how she handicaps 2-year-old maiden races at Saratoga. Got Acacia Clement coming on to talk about the Schuylerville Stakes and doing a preview with me for that. And then I'll have Chris Griffin on to, because now he's not working now that he's done calling races at Aqueduct. So I can use Chris all the time. So Chris is going to come on capping the card, and we'll go over all 11 races, or all 12 races, I should say, on the Diana Stakes Day card. So a lot of great stuff over there. But, if you use the app, you'll see that we have, daily long shots, we have stakes analysis, we have track stats, a lot of different content for players to make sure that they're informed, knowledgeable, and they can put forth their best wagers leading up to those races.
I hope Colin Sheehan's name will be on that wall of visitors to the Naira Bets
Oh,
YouTube page.
100%. You know it.
Be
Oh,
with,
you
I
know
want
it.
to hear it's. I'm gonna have Acacia. I'm gonna have Chris Griffin. I'm gonna have Colin Sheehan. Everyone's gonna go, "Who the hell is that?"
You
So
got
I
to keep
hope,
people on their
I hope
toes.
when you get up, when you get up and get big, maybe you'll have me on for a doubling down or for capping the card.
Oh, you know it.
You know what we have to do? We have to do a first preview of a stakes race on a Sunday night for old times, like we used to do here on the
Oh
channel.
yeah. That would be fun. That was so much fun when we would just be like, to like frantically getting the PPs up and like just like
Then
who's
just
in this
go.
race again and just like
Yeah.
trying to figure things out. Yeah, that was always a good time.
Thank you, Matt, for coming back on. The viewers here miss you, but they can find you everywhere. I can't stop seeing enough Matt. Actually, I was with my dad's. One quick story before we leave. I was with my dad this weekend, and he had the Belmont Stakes program from the weekend. And I said, "Oh, you got to
Yeah.
open it up." My friend Matt has an insert in there, and
Oh yeah.
he couldn't find it. So it must have been a separate page. But then I'm flipping through, and there's a nice big ad with your mug without the hat on. I said, "Well, usually he wears a hat, but that's my friend Matt."
Yeah.
My dad wear it. I'm going to look
No,
for him this weekend.
trust me, I got so many pictures. Like friends of mine were at the track, from college because I have a lot of buddies from. I have one friend in particular who lives up in Saratoga that I went to college with, and next thing you know, that picture of me is getting circulated on like 15 different text messages, and everybody's just, how it's like, everybody's making fun of you and giving you a little ribbing, and it's all in good fun. But it's been great doing everything here. But you guys are just absolutely continuing to crush it with all the stuff you do. I trust the Profits, and absolutely we'll have you and the other Profits on for different videos throughout at Naira Bets.
All right, I'm holding you to that. He's Matt DeSantis. Check him out at Phil DeMenace on Twitter, X. Go to his Naira Bets YouTube. He has plenty of content for you. My name's Colin Sheehan. Until next time, good luck, everybody. Put in the comments who you like for this daily double, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Matt, until next time.
It's now post time.